Welcome to the Lightwork Women podcast. We are experienced women with credibility. We know what life is like. Transform your life with our top-tier psychic and wellness services. We offer effective solutions tailored to empower you on your journey to spiritual wellness. In this podcast series, we talk about tarot, mediumship, Reiki, mental health, magic, witchcraft, and much, much more. We hope you enjoy our show. Please get a cuppa, have a seat, have a listen. And just remember, many hands make light work. Welcome to another episode of Lightwork Women. Tonight's episode, we're continuing our series on the goddesses, and I'm joined by the beautiful Robyn Ridley from the Goddess Sanctuary. How are you, Robyn?
Well, thank you, Renee. Lovely to see you again.
That's the way. I love talking about goddesses with Robyn because she is the expert. If you visit her website, robynridley.com, you'll find out all about her offerings and lectures and workshops. There's lots of things that she's been doing for a very long time. So she is the super duper expert. And I've learned so much from Robyn just by doing these podcasts. So it's been amazing. Tonight's episode, we're continuing the series. Last time we did Ceres or Ceres?
Yeah, we did.
Also,
yeah.
AKA Demeter.
Yeah,
And this week we are doing Pallas Athena.
we are.
So, and as before, we are also just going to roughly break it into three parts. We're looking at the mythology, the psychology, and the astrology around these beautiful goddesses. So let's talk about Athena tonight, Robyn. Would you like to open?
Definitely. I don't know about the expert, but but it's certainly dear to my heart. So thank you. Look, I thought a little bit about there's so much mythology around Pallas Athene, and some say Athena. It's just however you're used to working with the energy, and very much a Greek goddess, and Minerva being the Roman. Now, the myths of Athena are multifaceted, and we also look at her like there's a Mediterranean, Libyan. I tend to go with the more recent and sociological influence, where she is said to be born from the head of Jupiter, and for Roman, and Zeus if you're looking at Greek. Now, I'll go a little bit more into that shortly, but I just wanted to say that she is actually, there's so many stories around her, and I just wanted to mention a few in case the listeners want to actually look them up further. We can't go into everything because it's just too much. So I thought there are the various myths that we were talking about. The serpent wisdom of Pallas Athena, fascinating. And there was a statue up on top of the Acropolis of a serpent, the same size as the statue of Pallas Athene that was there. Also, Pallas, the warrior goddess, as she was born. The separation of her from her matriarchal heritage is very renowned, and that's a really interesting story. The slaying of Medusa, and also Athene's contest with Poseidon, which many people may be aware of. Poseidon, they both went into a contest to see who was going to be the ruler of Athens, and as the name suggests, Athena won, or Pallas Athene. Now, Poseidon gave salt spring water, obviously, he's a god of the sea, and she gave the olive tree or olive branch, depending on what mythology you follow. Same. And with that, there was the provisions for food and fuel, shelter and shade. And so obviously, interestingly enough, as we go into talking about her, we'll find out, yes, she won the battle, but she may have lost the war. There was a lot about her in relation to the matriarchal, patriarchal that we get to have a little peek into this evening. So when I talk about her, I do talk about the fact that she was the principle, I guess, of creative intelligence. And with that, it's a real shame that there was this understanding that they just didn't coincide, there's this whole maternal process that just sort of doesn't go with creative intelligence. It's sort of like that's like they two separate entities. So therefore, we had this real delineation, if you like, of the masculine and the feminine, or the matriarchal, the patriarchal. Because she was born of the head of Jupiter, she was already said to be a goddess of war or wisdom, or and that with it brought a very patriarchal strength, if you like, courage, a lot of things that the feminine weren't renowned for. And therefore, she was fighting a battle, but she was fighting a battle for purpose, but not always considered to be on the side of the matriarchal feminine. So there's just so much around it, and it's fascinating to look at. When I was looking into the various components with her, I thought it was important to talk about the little glyph. It looks like a little spearhead, if you like, or a spear. So it's like almost diamond shape on the top with a cross at the bottom, and that's the spear of the protectress. She is the can't even say the word, protectress, how's that, of the state, and the goddess of wisdom and justice, and some say creativity as well. I love the way she usually has the owl with her. And like I mentioned before, the serpent, the olive tree, the spear, often portrayed with the breastplate with Medusa's head on that as well. And and a Gorgon's head. And I think in relation to astrology, which we'll go into a little bit more later, very much linked to Libra and Aquarius, the air signs, and also Leo, the fire sign. And what do we look at here? We look at the polarity of courage and fear. So I think that's a nice place to start, Renee. That's just so without going into too much of the story, because there are many stories. I think if mentioning some of those so people can certainly dive deeper if they choose. But we know, yeah, born of the father, not the mother, and very much with that connection, if you like, to the patriarch. Yeah, yeah,
It's interesting you mentioned the Libran energy being that, she does also represent justice,
yes.
and the fact that she is also akin to that super intelligence regarding, the mind of Aquarius, and the
Mm,
fact that Libra and Aquarius, they're both air signs, but they're also both masculine signs because they're odd numbers on the wheel, and therefore they're also, they have the bravado, if you like, of being on the front foot, getting the job done, speaking their mind, not taking any crap, especially from, you know, another masculine energy.
mm.
Otherwise, it would be, a bit of a loggerheads. I know for a fact a lot of Aquarians, Aquarian women, and Aquarian Libran women. Sorry, women. What am I saying? Start again, Renee. Female Aquarians and female Librans are very headstrong.
Yes.
I'm the third sort of wheel in that, being a Gemini, but I see myself more as the kinder kid. I'm more of the younger kind of energy. I don't, I think about things from a factual and justice sort of energy. I mean, my Athene is in Aquarius. We were talking about this, but we'll get to that when we talk about the astrology. But
Mm,
the symbolism even in the tarot, if you want to just weave the tarot into the mythology sort of section we're discussing, if you
mm,
think about the major arcana, you've got your justice card, and then you also have the humanitarian card of the star. And, looking at that hope and that wisdom and intelligence, as you said, the super intelligence of the stuff that, dreams are made of, which I absolutely love. And I think she's a very powerful, you don't want to meet her in a dark alley kind of
no,
energy.
thanks. No.
Um, and yeah, just that those animal sort of familiars that you mentioned as well, being represented by the snake, or being seen with an owl, as well, is just so powerful. I mean, these animal totems as well have such significance as well. So I'm so glad that you covered all those things, because yes, this is a short kind of half hour podcast, and there's so much ground always, but if you're tuning in and you've never sort of dipped your toe in goddess, literature or, history study, it's super interesting. And those themes are still so relevant today, even now in 2025.
They sure are. They sure are. And when, like I forgot to mention, but when, or I might have, but when she was born and she was sprung from his forehead, it was said that she was already fully grown. She was a warrior queen, and she was clad in a suit of armor, shouting a triumphant cry of victory. So when she was born, so this mythology just goes to show that the potency of that energy already fully established. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm, mm.
Mm, yeah.
Well, it's always what's documented in the first breath or the first cry or the first of anything.
Mm,
It really, plants that seed, and
mm,
the rest is, as they say, history.
yeah.
Um, I had a look as well, and there's also a note about the name Pallas is sometimes thought to be a childhood friend or a title emphasizing her strength and intelligence. I don't
Hmm.
know where that might come from. Um, and also the fact that she's that protector of cities, and as a result, Athens, the capital of Greece, is now
Yeah.
named after her.
Yes.
A female symbol, a female archetype, which
Mm,
is really interesting. And it's funny when you were talking about it just in the opening about uh, the matriarch and the patriarch, and the fact that the matriarch is still revered and named after, the capital city is named after her. If you've ever seen that movie, My Greek Wedding, My Big
oh,
Fat
yes.
Greek Wedding,
Yep.
the women in that movie are just terrific. It makes me laugh. I might even watch it tonight, actually. It's just they make me laugh so much, especially the mother or the matriarch of the
Yep.
family. They're trying to convince the father that the daughter should go to school or change. She wants to be a travel agent or whatever and leave the restaurant. And she's like, but Mama, Papa would never agree. And then women are, he goes, get married, have babies. And she doesn't want to. And the mother says, listen to me. The man might rule the head, but the woman turns the neck, and she can turn the head any way she wants.
I like that. That's
I
very
love
clever.
that. Yeah, it always stuck with me. And I think that's very Greek. I mean, there's a running joke in the whole film anyway. That is from
Mm,
the Greek or word. Everything
mm,
started in Greek.
yeah. I love it. There was something, when you said that about Pallas too, there was something. See, this is where the different mythologies and the different backgrounds come in, but there was also something about named after her sister in some sense too. But
Oh,
I'm
okay.
pretty sure it's like a triple goddess energy of Pallas, Athene, and Medusa. Maybe I think it might have been.
Ah, okay. Like a
Yeah,
maiden, the mother, and then the
yeah,
crone
it
being
was,
Medusa.
and it was like, oh, okay,
Mm.
so, but again, that was amongst a lot of information, and there's just so much out there. So, it's about what catches which one do you want to follow, and what do you want to, what do you want to extract? When we're talking about, I might go into the psychological. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so it's not, this is about psychological themes. So it's really not psychology per se, but it's like there's the principle of the creative wisdom. So we talked about that. But that's linked to intelligence, social justice, one's artistic ability, their
Mm,
political activism. We talk about Aquarius, there's all these things that show up here, and our courage, our strength, our values. And so that's, you can see how that can be linked to psychology, the way that people work with those energies or not. So that's one of the first themes that sort of showed up.
mm,
The second theme that showed up was androgyny, and male or female. So we're looking at that masculine and feminine, and she did have that ability to change as she needed to. Like, she was quite masculine. However, she also did have all the creative arts. So that's how she expressed the feminine. But her highest way of expressing the feminine, which we talked about, was that intelligence, that
mm.
creative intelligence. So anything to do with reproduction, anything to do with mothering, anything like that. Any energies that arose around that, she'd put it into intelligence. So it'd be transformed into a way that she could use it. So it's not that she didn't have it, but it was how she did that. And with the androgyny and the androgynous state, I guess we're looking at masculine and feminine and working with both. And how often do you say in appearance, and in actual fact, many images of Pallas Athene are not necessarily feminine. They can be quite masculine, that or that androgynous look of either end or.
She was non-binary.
That's it. She could have been whatever, but that's certainly one of the things. And then I think if we look at that imbalance in sexual identity, that takes us to that next one. Look, I can remember in psychiatry or the DSM-4, they started to bring in things that never used to be in there around sexual identity, and I think it's become, if someone is not fitting into certain realms, I don't even know what words to use now, but if they're not fitting into a group or cohort, then we don't know where the imbalances are going to lie. And when we talk about psychology and psychiatry, it's new. It's very new with the changes that are happening now. But back then they were looking at, there was denial of femininity around that type of energy, or over-identification with men. And she did have that over-identification with men because she had to be like one of the men, if that makes sense, that masculine energy. So she was a strong feminine person, but she had to have that power that was given, that how do you put it, that men would listen to in some respects. I'm not sure what I'm saying there, but we could talk about that.
Yeah, like just projecting a masculine,
Yeah,
you know, not a
yeah,
facade, but
yeah,
it trying to integrate
yeah.
on a masculine level. Is that what you
Yeah,
mean?
that's it. And when we're talking about psychology, like, there's often been father-daughter complexes or whatever. And I think it's about, that over-identification with the father or the mother, and how that plays out in our lives. So we're talking about how these things can help we work with these energies. It's not just about her, but it's like, all, how do we work with those energies? Do we stand in our power? Do we rule? Do we do, or do we just conform or stay small? Or so it's looking at all
So
that. But
interesting.
I think, sorry, we're going to say something?
That's so interesting.
Oh, it is. And the conflicts between love and creativity. Like, another one, does it have to be separate? Why can't you have love and creativity? But she was a virgin goddess. Therefore, her priority was her ruling, her role,
Yeah,
the goddess of wisdom, justice,
purity of
create.
spirit and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So she was sexually, she was not interested in men because that's her role, was to do without and to actually perform her duties. So it was like, okay, so that's the love, and I guess that was her commitment to her role. When we look about it as ourselves, we've got that love and creativity. It's like, we just know, like, we know, we just were talking about Libra before. So when you think of Libra and you think of Venus, it's like, well, hang on, where's the Venus energy going here? Into her creativity. So in this, and we know that, you and I both know that creativity can show up in so many forms. Love can show up in so many forms. And it doesn't have to be you go without or you're not anything. It can be actually everything, in everything.
Yeah.
Mm.
While you were talking about the psychology, I was thinking, I was trying to put my finger on Aquarian women that I know
Mhm.
of and their demeanor and how they've operated, or, their approach to business or group dynamic or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And you are right. Like, they are very masculine and can lean into more of the, they'd be more at home standing up, in a front bar having a beer with one of the blokes than probably sitting around in the knitting circle out the back with the women.
Mm.
The
Mm.
feminine or the female Aquarians that I have known,
Yeah.
um, are very comfortable around the masculine energy. They don't shy away from it. They're not afraid to be one of the boys
Yeah.
in many
Yeah.
ways as well. And
Mm.
also just on that, yeah, oh, well, I don't want to go too far into the psychology of parentals, but um,
Yeah. We just
which
know, we know that
can
it's
be,
there, and we've
I
mentioned
don't
it.
think about it, what sign you are. It can
Yeah, I
happen
know,
anywhere.
we know, don't we? And that's what I sort of made that mention of that, and the over identification with mother and father and all of that. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely,
yeah.
definitely. And I think, and I think the last point in the if those themes that I was looking at or was thinking about is the occult themes around Athene, Pallas Athene. And that's
Mm,
in relation to the Kundalini, prophecy and oracle, which I thought is really interesting. But when we look at the prophecy and oracle, it's more scientific rather than mystic.
mm,
You know, it's just got that different feel to what we might have felt with Ceres or some of the other goddesses. You know, it's just got that
mm,
scientific feel. There
yeah.
is a magical will and creative visualization, and she gave people that gift of prophecy and the
Mm.
oracular. You know, she that in part of her workings, she passed that on. Mm. So very interesting.
The last bullet point that I've made here under the psychology section,
Mm.
um, and I want to sort of dovetail a little bit of pop culture in here because it's really interesting the fact that it does make sense.
Yep.
The last bullet point is invoking Pallas in psychological terms can relate to developing your inner wisdom, strategic insight, and balancing emotion with rationality. So when we think of pop culture, I can give you two examples of Librans and two examples of Aquarians that
Hmm.
are all in the public arena, talk shows, media, life coaches, um, and very strong women
Yep.
debating and working with emotional content, but being that voice of reason in an in an armchair podcast or television show. Here are the two examples I'm going to give you, or the four
Hmm.
examples. The two Aquarian examples is Oprah Winfrey
Yep.
and Ellen DeGeneres,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Okay. Yep.
Maybe now known as Ellen DeGenerate, but that's another story. Both of those women yield a lot of power, and they did
Mm.
become the top of the top of the charts when it comes to daytime television and working with people's you know real life stories, journalism, drama, um, sexuality, conversations around all sorts of stuff in daytime
Yeah, they
TV.
did. Yep.
Where does it end?
Mm.
And then on the other hand, you've got the Libra energy with that sort of sword energy of Pallas, which could be Judge Judy. She was a Libran.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you've also got the latest and greatest Mel Robbins, who's been around for a while, but she's now obviously in Hay House and doing that
Mm.
too. And she's also using the word and being quite masculine in her sort of delivery on life coaching and do's and don'ts and get your life together and da da da. And it's very direct and it's very archetypal, isn't it? Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
when
it
you think
is.
about it and you look at those
Great.
people. Because, I
Yep.
mean, they're living and breathing examples. And that's why I say to people, if you want to understand the psychology of people, dive into their astrology, have a look at, um, the archetype associated with that. And it rings true every time.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Even
Love
more
it.
with the goddesses now. I think it's
Yeah,
even
I
getting
know.
more,
I
to
know.
the real core, the real seed, the birthing of where this all started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I might just pop into quickly into the astrology a little bit
Yeah.
more. I've got here, like we mentioned, governs Libra and air,
Mm.
Libra and Aquarius, sorry, which are air, and then our Leo's the fire. Now, the aspect pattern combines opposition, trine, and sextile. Now, this aspect of configuration in the kite family stabilizes the inherent power of Libra Aquarius trine, while
Mm.
Leo and Aquarius opposition provides a focal point for the release of the creative tension. And I thought, wow, that it's no wonder Leo's there. So Pallas Athene's essence lies in the interplay between the creative impulse of Leo, the transpersonal social concern of Aquarius, and the balance and cohesion of the Libra. Go you. That's just what you said.
Yeah.
In,
Libra's the mediator. They're the
yeah,
Judge Judy.
yep, exactly. So that was perfect. And it's like, isn't it wonderful when it all comes together?
And, I did a half-hour live this morning on Instagram and it didn't save. And I'm completely gutted, but I'm going to actually use this opportunity to talk about what I was talking about with opposite signs this morning.
Yeah.
And when you think of what you've just said with the opposite energy of Leo and Aquarius, I know a number of Leo and Aquarius partnerships and marriages and, couples. And it is hilarious, Aquarius wants, hey, let's do it differently. Let's innovate. Let's, change, reinvent the wheel. And who cares who we step over along the way? Whereas Leo's like, be a bit more diplomatic and just try and be a bit warmer with people because that Aquarian energy can be really cold. I mean, look at the Queen of
Yep.
Swords.
Yep.
She's not everybody's friend. She
No,
thinks
she's not.
she's helping, but sometimes it can be very harsh.
Mm,
Whereas that Leo energy is like, no, no, people actually need a hug and they need a bit of kumbaya around the campfire. So that's why they complement one another in that way.
mm.
It's just exactly what you've said, but I've said it in my
Yeah,
own
I
words.
love that. Well, when we're looking at, when we're looking at the astrology, so there's so many aspects in our chart. So, I mean, for me, she's in Taurus in
Mm-hmm.
my third house. So it's very much about whatever I learn from her will be through the senses. I know that she's squaring my South Node, but trining my Pluto. So we're going from that. Like I bought something in that's I've got to work through there, and I've got the transformational ability to do that. So I'm happy with that. So I'm not going to go into it, but I just think it's important to know that we can look at this. So I think if we do have the opportunity, not today, but to look at the houses and look at the signs and look at all those things. But
Yeah.
knowing that she's connected with the creative, the arts, the healing, we didn't mention the healing aspect of her.
Mm-hmm.
She was very much connected to that. The political aspect, the sexual identity, many of the complexes. And I think, we could go on forever. So I'm just trying to summarize a few of the things that I've got here.
Mm.
Look, I just think it's just recapping on what I've said. So, whereabouts is your Athena, Pallas
Mine
Athena?
is 10 degrees in Aquarius. So
Aha.
again, that strategic resourcefulness in group dynamic and things like that is very strong for me. I do go in guns blazing, especially like not even just with collab projects like Work Women, which I forgot to mention. That's where we're part of, guys. I should
Oh,
have mentioned
yeah.
that at the beginning, but we'll wrap that up with the end anyway. Um, it is and working in the past in the arena of advertising and media, it's a
Mm,
very masculine industry. Well, it was in the 90s and the 2000s. And you have to be a warrior. You have to be Athena. You've got to go in wielding a sword.
yeah,
Otherwise, you're going to get eaten alive.
that's
And
it.
luckily, I think that's may have been my saving grace, having that sort of energy behind me in that goddess energy, even if I was unaware of it at the time. But people have actually said to me in the workplace, "You're scary."
Oh, yeah.
But maybe as well,
Dirty evil.
the
Yeah.
Scorpio in the sixth house has something to do with that as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, right. Oh, look. Well, she's in Aquarius now, so everyone
Mm.
would be having a sense of some of that anyway. Mm,
Yeah, it is dog eat dog out there at the moment, and even in the workplace. I don't know. I just don't. I think the romance is gone. I don't think there's enough love anymore. People are going to work to survive. They're not going to work because they love what they do anymore. They're going to work to. It's horrible, but it feels like kill or be killed.
mm,
It's very aggressive. I don't know what's wrong with people anymore. Maybe they've just become disconnected. Maybe there's too much technology. Thanks, Aquarius. There's too
mm.
much focus on their phones. There's not enough one on one. Like, management in these sort of formal situations will create these
Mm,
one on one catch ups and all this, but it's not personal. Nobody cares. They're not
no.
interested in whether or not you need support or, hey, are you actually enjoying the job? And everyone's just trying to save face and do and get on with it so they can go home to their family and carve out some sort of personal life. which for light work women, we all work independently and we have our own businesses, which is one of those things where you've got to commit, you've got to be obsessed, you've got to be 100% all in, because if you're not
Mm,
all in with what you're doing,
mm,
you're not going to love what you do. But with the astrology section as well, I did, maybe to wrap up, put a couple words next to each palace in each zodiac sign. So
yep.
if you're listening and you
Fantastic.
do want to check out where your palace, which zodiac sign it is, this is what it might mean for you. I'll try and be real quick.
Mm,
Palace in Aries, there's a focus on leadership, courage, and strategic action. Palace in Taurus is practicality, patience, and resourcefulness. Palace in Gemini, communication, learning, and adaptability. Palace in Cancer is emotional intelligence, nurturing, and intuition. Palace in Leo, creativity, leadership, self expression. Palace in Virgo, which actually she is connected to Virgo. I also read that too,
mm,
which is about analysis, organization, and that service. Libra, providing diplomacy, harmony, and justice. Scorpio, that intensity, transformation, and deep insight. Sag is philosophy, higher learning, and exploration. Capricorn is your ambition, discipline, and the structure around Palace. And then Aquarius is innovation, humanitarianism, and originality. And then your Palace in, lastly, Pisces is compassion, intuition, and creativity. So I think, what would you think if you were doing a ritual or something like that, um, Robyn? You would make as a, I don't know, an offering or a
yeah,
journal
it's funny
prompt?
because when I was reading about the occult practices, it was less about ritual. It was more so, rather than ceremony and ritual, they encouraged creative visualization. So
Okay.
I think that's where we probably
Aligned.
could go with that, visualize what we're trying to,
Mm,
bring to fruition, or yeah,
mm.
yeah.
Well, I'll be calling on the Goddess Pallas tonight when I'm working my moon water under new moon in Gemini. We are recording this on the new moon in Gemini. It might not come
Yes.
out for a little bit, but
Yeah.
um, it's quite timely, I think, talking about
Mm.
her and the mental aspect of strategy and intelligence.
Strategy. Yes.
Yeah, it's worked out really
Yeah.
well.
Mm.
All right, then. Well, Robyn, I reckon that's a wrap. Um, what a great episode. I'm really glad that we covered this topic. We're on a bit of a roll now with how we're going to tackle this encyclopedia of information that we try and make digestible in
Yeah.
30 minutes.
I know, exactly. No,
Um,
and I think I think one of the main things I just want to say upon finishing is
sure.
just knowing that we can call on that energy,
Mm,
excuse me, of Pallas Athena. We can pull that energy forth. And I think I actually like the androgynous approach. If we take away the masculine and the feminine, it just is, for goodness sake, it just is. We can pull an energy without giving it a label, then we can we'll master whatever we choose. Yeah.
yeah. What a great way to wrap up the show. Well, thank you, Robyn, for joining me and coming
Thank you.
together as again with Lightwork Women.
Yeah.
It's been terrific. If you'd like to find out more, you can listen to the end credits of the show. But I'll call that a wrap.
Yeah.
Thanks for everything tonight, Robyn. It's been
Thank
terrific.
you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Lightwork Women. If you'd like to find out more about any of the guests on our show and our practitioners, visit our website lightworkwomen.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.